Hi, everybody. Richard Trummond here again to talk to you about Legal Innovators, in particular, the Legal Innovators Conference in New York, our first time we've done an event in New York in the Big Apple. To talk to us a little bit about some of the subjects he'll be covering is one of our keynotes, Joe Green from Gunderson. Hey, Joe, great to have you with us.
Hey, Richard. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, real pleasure. And we're very excited to have you speak to our audience, which is going to be in Midtown in New York in November. Put the dates around the video. But first, Joe, I mean, we've known each other for a while. We've kind of been on the AI journey, in different ways. Me kind of writing about it, you kind of living the dream, as it were. So, I mean, you were saying off camera that you wanted to sort of like cover, how did we get here? And like, that's a good question. How did we get here? And where are
Yeah,
we?
I tell you, when I wake up and look at where we are, it's amazing for me to realize, when I came back to Gunderson after being a practicing lawyer here for many years, generative AI wasn't a thing, and I was coming to do innovation in a world where the possibilities that generative AI opened up, were not on my horizon at all. It is kind of shocking when I look back and just think about the types of problems that I wouldn't have dreamed of really trying to solve in a meaningful way, and to be doing that as quickly as we are. But it's definitely been a journey. It's been a process to get here, and for us, that process started even before the kind of public awakening about generative AI. Before ChatGPT, we at Gunderson had been, trying to use kind of older machine learning classifier type technology to structure data from contracts for analysis, deal terms, things like that. And then, I guess it was about a year before ChatGPT came out, we started playing with something that where the back end of it was a large language model, pre ChatGPT large language model. And it was like a eureka moment. Oh, you just want a date and you just ask it what the date is and it tells you the date. It doesn't give you the paragraph that the date is found in, or, then you have to go and kind of get the actual data that you're looking for yourself. And then we also started learning, well, hey, if you ask it slightly differently for the things that it's not working so great at, you may be able to kind of trick it into finding the right information. So we were doing prompt engineering before we knew what that was, or before anybody talked about prompt engineering. And so, we kind of were lucky that we happened into this technology pretty early. And I think that kind of helped open our eyes to the possibilities of what it could do, and made us want to be on the bleeding edge of adoption as a firm.
And what model was that? That was GPT
I
3,
think that one
2?
was actually based on GPT-2, but mostly kind of built in house off of one of the open source models.
Wow, wow. And so we scrolled to November, Wednesday. I looked it up. It was a Wednesday. Wednesday, November the 30th, 2022. The world
Yep.
changed, although many people didn't realize it until a few months later. But then they used ChatGPT on their phones and went, oh my God, something is going to change now for real. So what happened then? And then what happened next?
Well, in that November, I mean, we definitely, being a firm that focuses exclusively on the innovation economy and tech startups and venture capitalists, we have lots of lawyers who are always kind of following the latest in tech, and so we had plenty of lawyers who were, right there at the beginning, messing around with ChatGPT, seeing what it did. I remember being at that Thanksgiving with my family, and my brother-in-law taking it out, and we were like seeing what we could get it to do, and it was pretty amazing. But we didn't really think about doing things in more of a kind of a coordinated way at the firm until GPT-4 came out, and that's when Harvey and Case Text, their big launches, became clearer and clearer that legal was going to be a real beachhead market for these technologies, in terms of being able to do really interesting things that previously weren't really expected.
And what is that? I mean, I'm sure we've all got our own thoughts now. Just from your perspective, I mean, what is it about LLM technology that really changed the way we think about AI and law now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that law is such a language based endeavor, right? It's communication, it's interpretation of language, whether it's case law or statutes or contracts, right? Like, it's all language. Natural language, we can quibble about that, right? Like contracts in particular have their own kind of code to them. But so much of what lawyers do is language based. I think most lawyers think of themselves as practitioners of using language in creative ways. And so the facility that these models had with producing language, creating language, and manipulating language, to me, it just seemed like this was like a very obvious fit for what lawyers do.
And also, I guess, I mean, another aspect people have often mentioned is the time to value. And that it's not always perfect, but you get something back pretty fast.
Yeah, although it's interesting, I think that's changing a bit now with
Yeah,
the
right.
more complicated things that we try to get it to do. If you wait 15 minutes and then your output's pretty bad, and you need to iterate at 15-minute increments, it's that's not great. Now, if you wait 15 minutes and the output is perfect, it's worth the wait. So, kind of getting that balance right. But yeah, the ability, that was one of the first things when we rolled out a tool internally to our lawyers that we built. That was the main thing that we focused on is don't treat this like Google. Don't just ask, well, first of all, don't ask it for information because the information in it is pretty old and stale. At least at the time, it wasn't doing kind of web search and bringing in current context. But more importantly, you don't necessarily know how to interact with this tool. And the way that you ask a question the first time, and we learned this, like I said, before ChatGPT came out, the way that you ask a question, small tweaks yield fundamentally different responses and fundamentally different quality of responses. And so iterating and using the tool to try to help extract context from you, we found to be one of the most effective ways to use it. I think that's still the case.
And so for the lawyers at the firm, I mean, how much has it changed things? I mean, for example, I mean, I guess a very simple litmus test is, could you live without it?
So for the initial application that we rolled out, ChatGD, it was absolutely not a mission critical application for folks. I don't think it was fundamentally transforming the way people practice. We had 10 to 20%. I mean, I think these statistics probably hold true across all different kinds of organizations and technology adoption. It's sort of your early adopters, model. But we had 10 to 20% of folks who were either using ChatGPT or Gemini or using these things in their personal life, learning how to do it. They were curious and finding creative ways to make them useful. They would do the same thing with the tools that we provided. But it was a little bit daunting for people who were not in that early adopter cohort. And I think we're just really starting to kind of break the back on that way more mainstream adoption as the tools become better and just they do more out of the box without kind of needing to ask them just so. But also people are starting to get a better understanding of what they're capable of and how they can be made useful. And the last piece of it is that this is a behavioral change. I myself found it very hard, even though I do this for a living and was building these tools and launching them and talking about them all the time. I was still writing my own emails and doing a lot of things the way that I've always done them because for me those things weren't a problem to be solved. I had a way of doing. I wasn't looking for a solution, and remembering to go do something differently is a change, which is hard for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I guess as well, it's one of those things that it's hard to, I mean, you can, but I guess it's hard to do in a top down way because you're talking about very personal behavior, how you work yourself. Even if you're in the same practice group as other people, you may have your own way of doing things.
Absolutely. There's another whole kind of area of software that I find this to be especially true in, which is project management. I mean, I've tried a lot of different project management tools over the years, and everybody who's a professional in the workplace who's been there for more than 5 minutes has had to figure out a way to manage their own tasks and kind of how they go about doing their work and keeping track of things and whatever else. And it's very hard to get people to, kind of change that and buy into a totally different system when they have something that works for them. It's a little bit idiosyncratic. And I think generative AI is similar in some ways, but I think the challenge with generative AI is that it's so flexible a tool that often I think people are a little bit paralyzed by the possibilities and not knowing where to start. Or if they try something and they don't get a great response, great results for whatever reason, it wasn't a great question to ask. They didn't ask it in the right way, et cetera. I think for some of those folks, it's taken a little while to kind of come back around, give it another try, and see both the improvements of the technology and also the improvements of just their understanding of how they should try to.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it is such early days. Like I remember, I'm old enough to remember, the very first arrival of search engines like AOL, Yahoo, and so forth. And they weren't great. And sometimes you would just not use them anymore. But then Google came along, and even Google wasn't instantly brilliant, but it got brilliant very, very quickly. I mean, yeah, until it becomes part of your behavior.
Until it's ubiquitous, right? I mean, our my friend and colleague Naveen Pai, our chief knowledge officer, who's been at many of your West Coast innovative lawyers conferences over the years. He likes to say that there was a time when before Google, people would say, "Oh, you're just bad at search. You're just not you're not good at searching the internet." And then Google basically made that not a thing. Now nobody is bad at searching the internet. Everybody knows how to do that because Google made it that easy. But also people learned how to leverage Google. Like you said, Google wasn't perfect out of the gate, but once people actually start adopting it into their daily lives, getting some facility with it, learning the do's and don'ts, and when you lower that barrier to adoption and kind of how hard it is to change, then it's a combination of the technology improving and you improving it using the technology.
Which would suggest that perhaps we may not be there yet, but very soon, Gunderson and other firms, you will be at a point where you can't really imagine not having it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think for many of our folks, so we fast forward from kind of rolling out our initial ChatGPT application in 2023. Now we've rolled out multiple tools that are leveraging this technology internally, and we have Deep Judge for kind of enterprise internal search. We have Perplexity for external search. We have DraftWise for kind of pulling in information into documents. Perplexity in particular. I think many of our lawyers would tell you that that's now a tool that they can't or don't want to live without.
Interesting. And can you, I mean, going slightly off subject, I have to keep you very quick on this point, but can you customize Perplexity to legal use cases, or is it you just use the general purpose one?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that so much of, I mean, lawyers were very heavy Google users before Perplexity and before generative AI, because there's lots of information that Google is the easiest way to find that information, just that you need from somewhere on the internet. And Perplexity just makes that way faster and easier to do. So I think for a lot of people, it's actually replaced Google for what the things that Google historically has done for lawyers. You can tailor it. You can create customized spaces with, kind of specific system prompts, kind of instructions and documents that you provided and stuff like that. But I think honestly, out of the box is what people are talking about when they say don't take that away from.
Fantastic. And just to wrap up, really, just looking ahead, so much has happened, but really we are just beginning, aren't we? I mean, where do you see us going in terms of adoption and use of this
Yeah.
technology?
Yeah, so I know that many people think that we've sort of entered the age of agents, AI agents that do all the things. I actually think that the age that we're in is the age of tools. I think we're building a whole bunch of somewhat narrow, kind of specific, use cases that make sense and getting them to work reasonably well with the technology. And that ultimately, those are going to be the things that agents are able to leverage. And by bringing people along in this journey. So, I mean, there's a technology side to it and then a people side to it. The technology side is the technology out of the box doesn't necessarily do a lot of these things well. Maybe it will at some point. The models will get better and better, and they won't necessarily need as much of our kind of bespoke kind of engineering under the hood for particular use cases. We've seen that kind of happen time and time again as models have improved. But on the people side of this, we're bringing the people along to understand, hey, now I see all the different things that this can do. And now I have a mental model for that. And so, whereas I may have been paralyzed by that chat box in 2023, that I asked it to do certain things and it just didn't do a very good job. And I also really didn't know what to ask it to do, what were good things to ask it to do. By going through this journey, I think we're going to bring the people along to a place that when you slap another chat box, an agent kind of on top of it that can call all of these different tools, they're like, oh, yeah, I want it to do this. And I know it can because I've used that tool before. I just want the agent to do it for me. And so I think it's a really exciting place that we're at. I think we're really getting into like the application layer of this stuff. We're getting into the nitty gritty of like, how can we make this work in a workplace, for enterprise use cases? And I think there's a ton of potential there.
Fantastic. Yeah, totally agree. It's going to be very exciting to see what the audience and the other speakers have to say at Legal Innovators New York, which is in November. Just the last point, I mean, we haven't been there before. As you said, some of your colleagues have spoken at the California event, which is in June. What are you looking forward to?
Well, this is a long time coming for me because I've been trying to get to the San Francisco
Yeah.
conference for years now, and the stars just haven't aligned, so scheduling wise. So I'm just very. I mean, I've heard such good things from so many people who've been to the California and UK events, and so I'm excited that you're coming to my backyard in New York City, and that I'll be able to be there. I think these types of events, when you bring a great crowd together who are focused on solving these kinds of problems in the space, you're going to learn things. You're going to make good connections with people. I always take something great away from these kinds of events. So I'm really excited about this one.
Fantastic. And we're very excited to see you all and very excited to have you with us as well. So thank you very much. And we'll see you shortly.